Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you guys had a really nice long weekend. But we're back up and going again. So it is Tuesday. What is it, the 8th today? 9/8/2020. We just had a nice Zoom meeting, I assume. And so let's talk a little bit more about inverses, okay? So today our objective is to define and solve and work with inverse functions. Okay. So, to be an inverse, it's like an opposite. Okay. An opposite. Everything has an opposite, right? So if you're going to do the opposite of add, it's subtract. Do the opposite of multiply, it's divide. Opposite of up is down. Everything has an opposite, but we're going to call that an inverse. But what about a graph? So to do the inverse of a graph, we know that every point, some point, has some x and y value. Okay? As an example, got a point, and it might have, point A might be, say we'll go 2, 5. To do an inverse, its inverse is just to switch around and make the y the x and the x the y. So the inverse would be like this. It'd be a y, x. So you just switch them around. So in our example, it's as easy as this. Really, it's this easy. You switch them around. So we like this little symbol here. See this little -1? Everybody see that? I'm going to highlight that. So when you see that little symbol, you know that it's the inverse. Remember, math people like symbols. So you see a inverse, see that little -1? It means inverse. So if I wanted the inverse of this point here, just going to switch them around and make it a 5, 2. Okay, there you go. Piece of cake, right? Okay, do all functions have inverses? Actually, no, they don't. No, they don't. And we'll see that later. They don't. Okay, and we'll see why. Because, again, it's got to be a function. It's got to pass that vertical line test. So we'll talk about that, okay? As we get into, like, one of these, okay? Okay, so example 1. Find the inverse of this function. All right, so we know that here's our x and our y, okay? So what I want to do is just switch this around. So to get the inverse, I make the input the output. So I'm going to say, okay, my new chart would be this. My new x and my new y would be, you ready? My -2 become my y, and my -8 would become my x. Easy. My -1 becomes my y, and my -6 becomes my x. My x of 0 becomes the y, and my -4 of y becomes my x. I'm just switching around, that's it. My 1, which is an x, becomes a y, and my -2, which is a y, becomes an x. My 2, which is an x, becomes a y, and my 0, which is an x, becomes a x. My 0, which is a y, becomes an x. Okay, that's it. Okay, now graph both sets of points. Okay, so I'm going to graph, first of all, I will graph the original in blue so you guys can see this. Okay, so I'm going to go -2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there you go. And I'm going to go -1, -6. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I'm going to go 0, 4. -4 is there. -4 is there. I'm going to go 1. -2 is there. And 2, 0, 0. Okay. So there it is. I could connect the dots, but I'm not going to because all I'm asked to do is just the points. I'm not going to connect the dots because there might not be points in between. Now it's inverse. All right, let's do its inverse. I'll do its inverse. I'll do it in red. Got to graph the inverse in red so you guys can see this. I'm going to go ahead and, actually, you know what? I'm going to do it in green. Change my mind. Because I'm going to use red for something else. I'm going to do it in green. Let's do it in green. So, -8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and -2. -6, -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1. -4, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, -2, 1, and 0, 2. Okay, there you go. Now, here's something that we want to see. And that's why I wanted to save my red for something else, okay? So it turns out, and this hopefully won't surprise you too much, that if you take this line right here, and I'm going to draw in this line right here, okay? And this is the line y equals x, okay? All right, this is the line y equals x, which is start at 0, up 1 over 1, up 1 over, that's the line y equals x. That you'll see a reflection or a fold. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but if you were to take this and fold it over this line, the points fold right onto each other, right? Directly opposite, okay? So if it is an inverse, then what we want to know is this, kind of an important thing, is that if we have an inverse and it's original, our reflections over the line y equals x, okay? Always. It will always happen. But you can see that I graph my points, and then they fold right on each other, okay? All right, now, let's talk about lines, not points, but lines, okay? So, let's take a look at this particular line here. So, graph y equals 1/2 x minus 2, and it's inverse. All right. I can do that. So let me do this one. The original I will do in blue again. See if I can find my blue pen. I keep dropping things, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to start at -2. Right, y-intercept. I'm going to go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. Okay, so there's my original. And there's my line, right? Because I want an actual line, okay? Now, that's y. If I want its inverse, I could do it one of two ways. So I could switch points, right? So for instance, I have a point right here at -2, -3. A point right here at 0, -2. Point right here at 2, -1. A point right here at 4, 0. Okay, so those are my points. I've got my points at -2, -3. I've got a point at 0, -2. I've got a point at 2, -1. I've got a point at 4, 0. Okay, so if I want the inverse, I'm just going to switch them around. Okay, I can do that. So I'll switch these points around. Let me see, I'll do that in a different color also. There's a C. So my inverse points are going to be, let's see, I'll switch it around. I'll go -3, -2. Switch it around. Remember, x becomes y. Just switch them. -2, 0. This should be really easy. -1, 2, and then switch around, be 0, 4. Okay, so let's see. Let's graph this. -3, -2. -2, 0. -1, 2, and 0, 4. There it is. Graph that in. Alright. Draw in my reflection line because I like to be able to see this. You don't have to always do this, but I like to do it so you can see. Sure enough, if I were to fold over this line right here, they just fold right onto each other, which they should, okay? Now, that's kind of a pain. There's a fast way to do it, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, okay? So what's the equation of this line? Well, the equation of this line has got to be right? The equation of this line, of my inverse line has got to be, my inverse has to be, well, we know it's an equation of up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So it's going to have to be a y equals a 2 over 1 x. And it looks like it has a y-intercept of +4. Alright, here's something I noticed, and hopefully you'll notice too. Since things are switched around, hopefully you notice that if this is an x-intercept, then it becomes a y-intercept because x's and y's are switched. If this is a y-intercept, then this y-intercept becomes a x-intercept. Okay, hopefully that's an easier way to do it. Okay, now you can get the inverse without having to graph it. Okay, so let's find a faster way to do this because this was kind of a pain, really. It works. You could graph a line. You could get all the points. You could take the points and switch them and get the inverse. Boom. But there's a much faster way to do it. So we know that f of x and y are the same thing. So let me just change this to y. Okay, f of x and y are equal to 3x minus 12. Okay, so let's find this inverse without graphing it because there's a faster way. Now remember, to do an inverse, we're going to switch x and y's. So instead of switching one at a time, point by point by point, let's just go and switch x and y variables because it switches them all. So what I'm going to do is this. I am going to switch x and y. So I'm going to rewrite this as, you ready? X equals 3y minus 12. Now, that is technically the inverse, but let's make it look better. So let's solve for y, okay? Solve for y will give me a much better look, okay? All right, so how do we solve for y? Well, that's easy. Let's go plus 12, both sides, right? We're going to go plus 12 of an x plus 12 equals a 3y. That's a 1x. I'm going to do that on purpose. Divide by 3 to get y by itself. Divide by 3. Divide everything by 3, so that cancels, right? So then I get a y equals a 1/3 x plus 4. That is the inverse to this equation. Okay? Much easier to do it that way, okay? All right, now, homework. You guys will see it's in your journal. I've got it as page 15. Let's go to page 15. All right, page 15. And you'll see that you're going to switch some points. Now these, you're switching x and y's, and then you plug it in 3. And on these, you're just going to, you're going to graph it first, and then find the inverse and graph the inverse. Do it both, okay? You're going to graph it first, and then find the inverse and graph that, okay? All right, so that's your assignment. We'll do 1 through 11 all, and then 12 will be the extra. Okay, that's what I got. Hopefully you understand it. If not, text me, email me, whatever, okay? There you go.